Well, my name is Tricia Suess. I'm the president of the Virtual Foundry, and we're making metal and ceramic 3D printing filaments that work in printers made for plastics. It's a really exciting, one-of-a-kind technology. My background is largely centered on business. I have a business degree. I've also tried a lot of stuff. I'm a trier. When I figure out how to do something, I move on to the next big challenge. Well, I'm in my next big challenge right now, and it's actually very thrilling. I'm in a hyper-creative work environment, in a hyper-creative industry that changes very quickly, and I'll tell you what, Keith, it's keeping me young.
Okay, so here's my, to give you an idea of like the average John Q. Public kind of perspective. Here's my understanding of 3D printing coming into having met you umpteen weeks ago. It was, I'm pretty sure we use machines that make stuff out of plastic layer by layer, which means you can do internally interesting stuff that you couldn't necessarily do if you're carving something or
Right.
molding something. So that's kind of my layman's understanding of 3D printing. And I have various tchotchkes around the office that people have given me over the years. Hey, look, we printed a keychain, have one.
Yeah.
And then I met you and you're like, oh yeah, by the way, we can do that except with titanium. And I'm going,
Right.
What? How is that a thing? Is this the Jetsons? What is, so that's essentially what's going on, right?
Right. Yes, and it feels like the Jetsons sometimes.
Okay, so where do you come into play in the 3D printing thing? Were you like X number of years ago, were you sitting around going, you know what I want to do? I want to get into 3D printing. I'm going to get a degree in 3D printing, maybe a master's in 3D printing. This is the future. Or did you just kind of happen upon this sideways? Or how does your background jive with the 3D printing industry?
I took a much more circuitous route, so I really don't have any experience with 3D printing. But the inventor of our products does, Brad Woods. So he's had this lifelong metallurgy hobby. He's been working for decades on ways to manipulate metal without using extreme heat. And he's found a couple, messed around with them. A friend gave him a 3D printer. He tried it for the first time and said, here we go. This is my outlet for figuring out ways to get metal into different shapes without using extreme heat. He developed the product, and then when he was ready for someone to come in and manage the business side of what he was doing, he approached me and asked me to be a part of it. And I immediately said yes. I with his wife, so she would kind of give me an update here and there.
Excellent.
So I was very, very pleased when he approached me.
Oh, hang on a second. I'm experiencing technical difficulties. Give me a minute here. Hang on a second. Oh, stop that. Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Closing down some windows here. Give our internet some space to breathe. Stop doing this to me, Keith, my internet is saying. Okay, go away. Yep, 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 you go away. All right. Boy, Google Chrome loves its RAM. Oh my goodness. Let me have all the memory, it says. Okay. Let's see if that improves anything. I'm terribly sorry. So you had this connection with Mr. Woods originally. How? Walk me through that again.
We've been in the same social circle for more than a decade.
Okay.
I'm good friends with his wife. She'd been talking about what he's working on. I understood the potential of it. So when he approached me to come on and manage the business side of what he was doing, I jumped at the chance. So I'm new to 3D printing. I'm new to metallurgy. I'm new to entrepreneurship. It's been a very exciting project to be a part of.
Okay, so typically when you think of startups, right, you're picturing somebody early 20s, maybe they're still in university, maybe they just graduated, that sort of thing. And they're understandably learning a whole bunch of stuff for the first time, right?
Yes.
We have, and correct me if I'm wrong, so you're not a founder, but you're the president now, right? Or are you one of the founders? Okay.
Uh, we are considering me a co-founder by this time, yes.
Oh, okay. Okay. Excellent. So then you are still very much in the space of learning all of the things that we
Yes,
typically associate with anyone in a startup.
absolutely, yes. Including the venture capital space and everything goes along with that.
Yes, the venture capital space. There's a lot of learning there for everybody, I think.
Yes, it's an industry of its own that we need to plug into. So it's been, yes, it's this role has been a nonstop learning challenge. That's why I say it's been thrilling and it keeps me young. It's a great place to be in midlife.
And now, has all of this been happening
Where,
right here in Stoughton? Is that right? Stoughton, Wisconsin.
yes, yes. So everybody that works at the Virtual Foundry lives in Stoughton. We're all very happy residents of the city. We're committed to Stoughton. Hoping to be able to stay here forever.
All right. Excellent. Okay, so forgive me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off my video. Here we have this leading edge industry. As we said, this is the Jetsons up in here. This is like the 22nd century, basically. And this is happening in the bottom right-hand corner of Dane County, basically, here in Wisconsin.
Yes.
What kind of challenge does that present a, a, a company that is clearly on a technologically leading edge?
Well, I don't recognize many challenges of doing this from Stoughton, Wisconsin, but I do recognize many benefits. That's the proximity to Madison, Milwaukee, and Chicago,
Okay.
and the resources that those communities offer. Stoughton is large enough to have lots of opportunity, and it's small enough that you can know your mayor, you can know your government workers, you can
Nice.
know city staff, and you can be familiar with how to work through the system properly. So there's a tremendous benefit to being in a community our size for that reason.
Nice. Nice. Okay, so here's a question that is near and dear to my heart, right? So I deal with people stuff. When you, as president of a startup, when you hear the phrase "people challenge," what does that mean to you? What leaps to mind?
You know, it's always a challenge when your output or even your living is dependent on the output of other people.
Sure.
You know, if everyone would just do do things in life the way we think they should, everything would be perfect, right?
If everyone just did it my way.
Exactly. Well, that's just not what happens. So there's a lot of talk about it being difficult to hire people.
Mm-hmm.
I am of the belief that if you think it's going to be difficult to hire people, it will be difficult to hire people. There are still really great workers out there who want to be a part of something really cool. And the culture makes a difference. So we value humor around here. We're very team-oriented. Our folks are working very closely together to accomplish a common goal. And we also have to be agile. And that's easy for some folks and a little bit harder for others. But we work with everyone to make sure that we're being responsive to the market and having fun while we do that.
Gotcha. So you raise an interesting question, an interesting point there I want to ask you about. When most people picture any given startup these days, typically you picture a software as a service kind of an entity, right? We're building an app, we're building a web-based service of some sort. And so when folks think, okay, well, we know we need to scale up or what have you, who are we going to be hiring? We're going to be hiring engineers, probably some salespeople, right? And that's just, I don't know, 3/4, 80% of the companies out there in the startup space in general. Is that the same case for Virtual Foundry when you're looking however far in the future, a day or a year, and you're looking at the next X number of folks you need to bring on board. Is that different for you because you're dealing in a physical space?
So the folks and the roles that you mentioned are still going to apply to us. We still need those sales and marketing people. We still need those experts in finance. We still need all of those regular business functions to be covered and to be covered well. But we're a manufacturer on top of that. So we need folks in production. We need folks who are fulfilling orders, managing our customers, which is going to be common among every business.
Sure.
But the manufacturing part of it does really add another element. So we're maintaining a production staff and an order fulfillment staff because we're shipping out physical products. So as we're thinking about scaling, we're thinking about additional manufacturing equipment. We're thinking about space as an issue that maybe a SaaS company wouldn't necessarily have quite a concern with the amount of space that they are planning for the future.
They probably don't need a loading dock, for instance.
Right. Yes, we do.
So you raise a great point there. You're not only dealing with typical technological restrictions and how do we scale up something from a minimum viable product. We actually need a physical space. We need a warehouse. We need a loading dock.
We're hoping to be able to stay in our current facility through 2020 and then make a move in the first half of 2021. So that does give us a little bit of time to secure funding to make that move and then also to secure the place.
Gotcha. Well, so what else are you dealing with? What are some of, if you picture the top 3 challenges that you're facing at this stage, what's one of those top 3 challenges keeping you up at nights?
Sure. Well, funding is the major one. So we're currently raising and looking for investors as well. We'd like to fill that financial raise with venture capital, non-dilutive funding like debt and things like that. So we're very actively working toward that end. Another thing is scaling. So when we think about scaling, we talked about equipment and personnel and things like that and space needs, but we've also got packaging and suppliers, and we've got raw material suppliers that we need to make sure can deliver on time when we need it. And we've got packaging needs. It's just cardboard boxes. We have a huge bank of cardboard boxes, and we need to make sure that we can keep that cardboard boxes coming through here. So aside from personnel, equipment that is involved in scaling, we've got supplier issues too that we're going to need to manage very carefully as we grow.
Right. All of the supply chain stuff that you mentioned there from the time it rolls off the press or however you make it. I'm picturing a press. I don't even know what that means, honestly. From the time that it's created there, you've got to already have that entire pipeline in place.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
That's a lot of moving pieces, literally, for you to deal with. And so here's probably some info that I should have prefaced the discussion with. What do we consider the founding date or the founding year for the company?
2015.
Okay, so 2015, and you're at roughly what's your head count now?
6.
6, okay. Holy cow. All of that stuff we just discussed, and 6 people are doing it. Now I really appreciate you taking out the time to do an interview with me. Okay, so you're dealing with all of these aspects of scale, and getting back to the initial challenge you talked about as far as raising funding, that's clearly a very common challenge for folks in the entrepreneurial space.
Yes.
How have you found potential investors to be receptive? Do they get it? Is there an extra educational challenge for you there?
Well, most of the time, in any sort of organized pitch event, we only have about 10 minutes to get our story across and then answer a couple of questions.
Oh, wow.
So we have to just basically remove all of the science from what we're talking about and talk about the business. So what has really surprised me that I've learned through working through this seeking investor process, that you can't just tell them how great your product is and they write you a check.
Okay.
So they actually want to know about the company. What have you done? What are your plans for the future? How solid are your financials? How solid is your plan going forward? How are you going to make me money is what they really want to know. and they won't just take your word for it either.
Yeah, right. They
You have to be able
understandably.
to show. You have to be able to show that very intelligently. So one huge benefit of an investor search is that it forces you to really look closely at your business and understand it, and get some real plans and some real strategies laid out.
Right. I mean, it's been said by wiser people than I that for you to properly understand something, try teaching it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
That if you can't explain this in 10 minutes or less to a group of folks not necessarily educated with the space, then you yourself maybe don't have the grasp, the details, the background that you should. And
Right.
I'm guessing that has been part of the discovery process you've been going through.
Yes, absolutely. I was hoping that we could just tell people how awesome our product was and they would get their checkbook out.
Right.
It hasn't worked that way so far.
Okay, but I'm
Trying.
sure after you spend a couple minutes explaining, because I've heard you do this, after you spend a couple of minutes explaining, okay, here's the deal, 3D printers, we're doing this with plastic, we can give you a spool of molybdenum, and you
Right.
can print with whatever that is
Yes,
on this exact printer that you got for $500 off of Amazon. So
that's right.
after you do that, do you see kind of that light bulb moment and people are, oh, holy cow, that's a big deal? Do you see some of that?
Yes, absolutely. So talking about what we're doing in general with any person, you can tell pretty quickly their level of understanding of the 3D printing space by how glazed over their eyes are when you begin to talk about it. So,
Right.
and we certainly are all versed now in explaining 3D printing from the very beginning, from scratch, for someone that hasn't had any exposure to it. Most people have by now, so we can start from a place of mutual understanding about what basic 3D printing is and build from there. Luckily, we fit into the basic 3D printing space. So if anyone has seen a 3D printer, maybe at school or their kids' school or on TV or something like that, then it gets a lot easier to understand what we're doing. But certainly when we have the opportunity to really describe the metal 3D printing space that we live in and how we're different from every other option out there, lots of light bulbs go off. You're absolutely right. There's a lot of excitement generated when it really clicks for people what we're doing here.
Right. One thing that I have learned from the fabulously informative television show Shark Tank is that anytime that you hear about leading edge, revolutionary, interesting products, these sorts of things, hopefully the creators have all manner of patent and what have you on lockdown. So I'm assuming this is the case, that I won't be able to just have this conversation with you and then go down to Walgreens and buy a spool of molybdenum for my printer, right? I mean, this is something that is unique the Virtual Foundry, right?
Yes, we do have a patent, and what the patent covers is the process that our material allows. So rather than disclosing the recipe to have the actual recipe of our filament patented,
right,
Brad Woods chose to instead patent the process that our material allows. So even if someone could reverse engineer the recipe and then go through all of the research required to get that recipe into a usable format, they still wouldn't be able to use it the way that it's prescribed because we have that process protected.
Right. So somebody can't just purchase a spool of your product online and then take it into their basement chemistry set or whatever and decompose it into the ingredients and go, aha, now I can do this too. The
right.
process is protected.
We've said several times around here, what does Brad Woods in his basement in Stoughton, Wisconsin have that other companies that are funded to hundreds of millions of dollars haven't been able to figure out? And we think the answer is persistence. He just kept trying and kept trying and kept trying and continues to. So our product gets better and better as time moves on. So it's exciting to watch.
Excellent. Excellent. So I'm picturing as you're describing this to me, okay, well, we create this product. It's designed for folks with normal everyday printers to use. In other words, you don't have to go buy some brand new $250,000 device. Right. This is comparatively off-the-shelf technology in this day and age. So then I'm guessing the future for growth, for success for your company probably deals with a certain amount of education. Hey, folks who make things, did you know that this is now an option for you? But also, once you do have that education, once those light bulbs go on with people, the business need that I'm guessing you're looking for, partners, right? Folks that are going to be going, yes, we need to print a ton of stuff in exactly this manner. We would like to be buying X number of kilograms of your material in bulk in perpetuity, right? Is that kind of where the business success lies for you, or help me figure it out?
That's exactly it. Yes. So if you imagine the technology adoption curve, it's that bell curve, and I'm going to do it backwards to me. I'm hoping that it's going in the right direction for you.
Yeah.
It's that technology acceptance bell curve, and you've got the super early adopters over here, the people who are always looking for the next new cool thing. Right. That was where we started with those folks, because they want to try everything that's new. And then we move further along the curve and we start to come up, and then we're in that next group. Actually, I think this segment is called the early adopters, and I don't remember what the very first people are. And we're kind of in here. So industry as a whole is doing a lot of research with our product. They're trying to figure out how it fits into their processes, what can they do with it, how can they make it work in their regular work. And then we'll eventually see a lot of that research turn over into regular consumption as we round the curve here, and then on the other side. So you're absolutely right. It's a brand new technology. And when Brad first showed it to the world, they didn't believe him. They said, that's not true. You did that some other way, and you're trying to tell us that you 3D printed it in a regular printer. That's not possible.
Yeah. Take that back to your garage, put it right next to your perpetual motion device and your cold fusion, and
So we have passed that hurdle.
Okay.
And now lots of people are taking a really close look at it.
All right. Excellent. So what is, if you could push a button and have any ideal business relationship materialize, what's the ideal for you? Who would you really love to be in contact with?
The Department of Defense is a nice one. There are so many different areas, and they're doing so many different things, and there's a significant potential in so many areas. So Department of Defense is a great, large potential customer. They have been buying from us and taking a look at the product. Aerospace is another hot industry for metal 3D printing. So we do have an aluminum, and as you mentioned in the beginning, titanium filament it's nice and light and strong, and that's what the aerospace industry is looking for. So that's a great area of growth for us to get into. In the shorter term here, we're going to start internally developing a process to make injection mold tooling so that we can tap into that market.
Okay. So how is that different? I'm assuming that uses the same filament that you have created. How is that different from 3D printing?
So what will be different in that area, will we be making the tooling for the metal injection molding process via 3D printing. So the difference, the way that we develop that application is in the back end on the sintering process. And we haven't talked about that yet, but that's in the heat treatment phase of using our materials. So you've got your print from the printer,
right?
And you bury it in a sand-like material in a container and put it into a furnace. It burns out the plastic that's holding the metal powder into the filament shape. Right. And it fuses those metal particles together. That's called sintering.
Okay.
Now the resulting object has some porosity from where the plastic was.
Okay.
We've got some techniques that we've worked with around here, and a couple more ideas for different ways to do it, of that final object being a solid object rather than having that porosity. And that's what would make the metal injection mold tooling possible, because that needs to be able to withstand significant pressure and heat.
Right. Okay.
So when we're talking about internal development for that application, it's about that post-processing activity to get to a solid metal part.
So it sounds like amongst the six of you, not only are you growing the business and doing all these sorts of things. But, oh, by the way, we're also really expanding in these kind of R&D efforts. So how are the other ways that we can apply the technology we've created? This is a ton of stuff for a handful of folks to be doing. What is something that you brought to the table from your own past, if it's job history, if it's experience, if it's skills, that is really, you're just bringing a real value to this huge R&D kind of endeavor?
What I've done with the company so far is turn it into a real company. So it was a product that was being sold, but we weren't very organized about it.
Okay.
So I came in, we cleaned up the place literally and figuratively, got some processes in place, got some organization and some structure around the product. So essentially made a real company out of what was happening.
Okay.
And then from there, just continuing with our culture of high customer engagement, high customer service, quality product, and continuous improvement. So getting a little better every day, a little better every month. And that's been working really, really well for us, is just that forward looking, just keep being a little better.
Nice. Okay. And you just touched on something that I wanted to make sure we brought up, because when you and I first met, you were asking me phenomenal questions about company culture. Hey, how do we track this? How do we improve it? What does this mean to us? These sorts of things, which I got to be honest with you, companies that are 10 years old, 20 years old are lucky to have anybody just raising a hand and asking these sorts of questions. So I was just blown away that a company at this stage had somebody such as yourself asking these sorts of questions. So A, good on you. B, tell me about some of your interests when it comes to talking about company culture.
Sure. So I want it to be a fun place to work. We're not a very big team, and we need people to be really engaged and to pitch in and help wherever it's needed.
Right.
And that's a culture activity.
Yep.
If the folks who are in leadership aren't willing to do that, they're not going to inspire anyone else to do it either. So
Gotcha.
culture is very important to me in having a pleasant place to work, having highly engaged employees who want to contribute, and then also creating a space where other folks will want to come in and work. Diversity is important to me. So
Good.
I want to create a place where people who aren't like me will feel welcome.
Excellent.
And then also creating a space where we know who we are and we're able to attract others who fit into that and will contribute to that and expand us.
Nice. So it's not just, hey, we need somebody with this set of technical skills or what have you. It's, listen, here is our definition of what makes us us. And we want, correct me if I'm wrong, I think this is what you're telling me, we want somebody who is certainly largely aligned with that, but we're also looking for somebody to bring something to the table that we don't have. We want you to add to the culture that we've established. Is that safe to say?
Yes.
Excellent. That is a surprisingly progressive viewpoint, and I'm really glad to hear somebody say it.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, so I originally promised you that I wouldn't take too much of your time, and I already have. But by way of closing, is there anything that you would like to share about the company, your accomplishments, your future, any of these sorts of things that we haven't touched on?
Well, sure. We're growing quickly. The future is very exciting. We are unique in the metal 3D printing space in our custom material opportunities. So you've mentioned molybdenum a couple of times, which I'm impressed that you are able to say that.
Just because you said it once in a pitch competition, and so I had to remember that.
So being able to make those other materials is so key to the success of our customers. So they're able to do things and make shapes that just weren't possible before. 3D printing in itself allows for part geometries that aren't possible through other methods of manufacturing. Then when you're able to add on top of that, being able to get a material that isn't available on the common market in a 3D printable format, imagine the possibilities that are available there.
Right.
It's a really exciting future in 3D printing in general and for the Virtual Foundry.